Hello, I was tagged by Really Big Monkey, and the tag was 5 tips or pieces of advice you would give a new or beginning wild camper. It's very windy today. I brought a shotgun mic. I tried that and it was just a bunch of noise. So I've actually just got the camera mic on and it seems to be working fine. If the audio does mess up a little bit, I apologize. Now, the tips that I give are from personal experience. They may not be textbook, but I sleep year-round, pretty much weekly in the bush. So various different types of shelters, setups, and so on, but I know how to keep warm in very low temperatures. I've been down to about minus 35, minus 40 Celsius up here in the eastern Canada woods. So it does take a lot more gear, it does take some skill, and also, it all depends on how you're dressed, your sleep system, your shelter, and so on. So I'm just going to be going through a few of those tips that may help a few folks. First off, what I'm going to talk about is dress. Very important is dress. And knowing what layers that you're going to be using and what materials. Now, Really Big Monkey did discuss this. I just wanted to discuss it up here in what I use. Right now, it's 0 Celsius, but the wind's so strong. I'm not sure what the wind chill is, but it's probably, negative double digits right now with that wind. So, first off, I have a wool stocking hat. That's key to me. If it gets wet, it's wool. Wool usually retains its insulation value between 60 to 80%, most say. So I use wool. I also have wool socks on. And I always wear, not sure you can see, but I'll zoom down. I always wear rubber boots with insulated liners. So these here, I'm not getting wet out here because you do not want to get wet in a cold environment because, like some say, you get wet, you die. So there's the boots there. I've used these for years. I grew up working in the woods and such. My stepfather wearing the same style boots. They're rubber boots. They go up to here, so I can go through some pretty deep puddles and snow before I get wet. They also close up the top if you want, but if I put on some rain pants and such, it goes right over the boots. I don't have to worry about snow going into my boots as well. Very, very useful, and these ones here are rated for minus 30 Celsius. So keeping your feet dry, very important. I actually have another pair of socks, wool socks, in my bag that I carry. So if these do get wet, I can sit down, make a fire, or if I don't have a fire, I can still take off those wet boots and such, crawl into a nice warm sleeping bag, and keep my feet from freezing. So very important to have another pair of good socks. I prefer wool just because if they do get damp, they still have some insulation value. Now there's another saying called, it says cotton kills. The reason why is cotton is very good for insulation, but it's a sponge. It's hard to dry as well. Once you get it wet, it's hard to dry. And any moisture soaks right in. So that's one factor when you wear cotton. Myself, on an inner layer, mid layer and such, I have wore cotton in the past, and it has not affected me because the way I wear my clothes. I wear a layer system. Now, first off is a base layer, and it's a polyester wicking layer. So if I'm walking out here, if I start feeling myself sweat, first off, this here is a wind and waterproof jacket, and it's insulative as well, but it doesn't have a whole lot of insulation. I have my insulation layer here, but this here blocks this wind, so I don't feel that wind chill right to the bone kind of deal. But what I was saying about the base layer is if I start getting damp, my body heat, the radiant body heat, will start radiating through and drying that as long as I don't get too wet. So before I get wet, if I'm hiking in with a backpack and such, I start stripping off clothing because I want to stay at a comfortable cold. If I stay just, where I'm not uncomfortable, but I feel just a little bit cool, well, I'm not going to sweat. I can provide that by stripping off layers. So I have an outside layer. This here is a polyester as well. I've got a fleece layer, and this one here is a polyester as well. So this here layering up, I can keep stripping this off. I start getting cool again, I can put it back on. Now on the lower half, I have long underwear on, and they're polyester as well. And I have a cotton polyester blend pants on. So these ones here, if I was actually going to be camping, I would put either a ski pants over top of these that are waterproof, or a rain pants, something that is going to protect my pants from getting wet, because getting wet is not good out here, and the reason why is because of what it does to you. So your radiant heat is basically evaporating that water, and that has a cooling effect. Also, your material, the microscopic air pockets, are now filled with water, so they don't have the insulation value of your clothing. So staying dry is very important to maintain that insulation value and being able to trap that radiant heat from your body to keep you warm. Next, we're going to talk about shelters. What are you going to use out here? Are you going to be sleeping in a hammock? Because that's totally different than sleeping on the ground. Are you going to sleep on a raised bed? That's different than sleeping directly on the snow. Are you going to be fire dependent? Do you have the resources? There are a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself. Myself, I never sleep in a fire dependent shelter unless I'm survival training or in a survival situation. I never sleep fire dependent because it takes so much firewood. It can take up to, I mostly have softwood here. That can be 10 trees or more that have to be dead and good firewood. Sometimes you have to walk quite a ways around to find that many trees. I'm out here pretty much every week, so I would have to be moving from camp to camp, because I'd be stripping my resources within a couple nights of all the firewood in that area. It takes a lot to spend a whole night with a fire going, being fire dependent. I never do that. I only have my radiant heat that I'm constantly giving off, so I dress to trap that heat, and I also have sleeping gear that traps that heat, so I'm never fire dependent, because you can't always count on having the materials and fire. So let's talk ground camping. This here is a closed cell foam sleep pad. This one I can lay directly on the snow and sleep on this without having the ground sucking the body heat out of me from conduction. So closed cell foam has been a lifesaver for me. Usually I will take a poly tarp, lay right directly on the snow, and you gotta watch, you gotta stake it down because it's like a crazy carpet. You step on it, you can go. So you gotta be careful. But then I would lay this on top of the poly tarp, and what that does is it's wide enough that I'm not knocking snow on top of my sleep pad, or if I'm laying on it, my sleeping bag is not in the snow. So having a tarp down first for a vapor barrier, and also keeping the snow off of all your dry sleeping bag and off your sleep mat and such is key. And also a good sleep pad. Closed cell foam I have found the best. I have slept with the self-inflating pads on the snow, and I have actually got up and changed to this because these here are far better, the closed cell foam, than the inflatable. And the reason why I believe is it does not have the same foam, and it also, the air in the mat gets cool. So you get cool through conduction. This here, closed cell foam, it has worked the best right on top of the snow or on top of a raised bed. I've also used these in a hammock as well for years. This is all I've had before I got an underquilt. These here work great. And where they're rubber, they actually stick inside your hammock and don't slide around like the inflatable ones will. Mostly you'll see people get in there and their sleep pad will go sliding right the other way, and I've seen them actually slide off. So these here work great. They're cheap, they're lightweight, and they've been the best for me out here in this cold. So directly on the ground, you can do as I said, put a tarp down, lay your sleep pad on, and then put your sleeping bag on that. But the key is to stay dry again. And then you can just put a ridge line and put a tarp. So I actually have a video of that, which I'll add in the description as well. Hammock camping is something totally different. As you see here, I have a underquilt on this. And the reason why is because the ground, when you ground sleep on top of the snow, that snow is 0 Celsius. So that snow, that's what you're getting under you, is 0 Celsius, and your sleep pad has to be able to stop that cold conduction up through 0 Celsius. When you're hanging in the air, whatever the temperature is outside, that is what's under you. So if the temperature is minus 30, if you're sleeping on the ground, you're on the snow. So underneath of you is 0 Celsius, because that's going to maintain that temperature, 0 Celsius. Unless you have a sleep pad that your heat goes down through and actually can melt your snow a little bit. So you want to make sure you have a good sleep pad. In a hammock, if it's minus 30 out, underneath here, underneath you is minus 30. You have to be able to have something under you that can trap your body, radiant body heat, and stop the cold from going in. Otherwise, you can freeze in a hammock if you do not have the proper under quilt or under layer. If you lay in a sleeping bag in there, what happens is where this is puffed out, it has far more micro air pockets to trap that radiant heat. Excuse me. So having those more air pockets means more insulation. So when you lay on your sleeping bag, you compress that. You minimize the micro air pockets so you don't have the insulation value that you once did on the underneath. That's why you put something on the outside that is still nice and puffy so it can stop that cold and trap the radiant heat. You can get frostbite, hypothermia, and death can occur. This is no joke when you're winter camping or cold weather camping. Be prepared and test your gear in a safe location for sure. Now, like I mentioned with the underquilt and ground sleeping, now I'm going to talk about rating bags and what's worked with me, and also something that I've learned from experience that works for me that I think most people would like to know because it is not textbook. So let's talk sleep bags. This one here is a 0 Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit sleep bag. I've used it for years. I can actually get 0 Celsius out of that, but the rating they have on bags are usually the extreme rating. Comfortable rating is I add 5 Celsius to my bags. So if it's a 0 degree bag, then I know I can sleep comfortable at +5. Everyone sleeps a little different. Some sleep colder, some sleep warmer. So that's why you have to test your own gear, know your limits of that gear, but do it safely. Myself, I always add 5 degrees. So I look on the weather, it says -10 for the overnight. Well, I think it could go down to -20. I've seen it go down, they say -10, it's -15 and such. So I make sure if it says -10, I'm carrying out a -20 sleeping bag just to be on the safe side. I also carry a extra wool sweater in my bag, just another layer. And so you always take more than you need for your bag. Whatever it's rated for, that's what you figure on and add 5 degrees. Very few bags that's rated for 0 that I can actually sleep at 0 and be comfortable. So always add more to it. So if this is a -5 and it's -5 for overnight, I'm getting a -10 sleeping bag. So just add 5 Celsius. That's what works for me. Find what works for you and test your bags because each one may be different. I think this is still 4. So what I wanted to mention also, sometimes I'll take a -20 and take a 0 and put one inside the other just in case. If it says it's going to be -15, I make it and I take a -20, I'll take a 0 degree just in case it drops down to -20 and I only have a -20 bag. So it's only a prediction with the weather. It can get a lot colder and usually does. So be prepared. If you put 2 together, I've seen me take a -5 bag and a 0 degree bag and be good down to -10 kind of deal. So like I said, it all varies. You have to test that yourself. Just test it safely. And lastly, what I want to go over is sleeping in a sleeping bag in your clothing. It is said you never sleep in your sleeping bag with your clothing. You strip it off. That is true to a point. I've been out many, many nights, like I said, in the cold. And what I normally do is I'll take off this outer jacket, and what I have on, and I would take off this one sweater. I never bring extra clothes out to change into. I don't normally have the room in my pack, and when it's minus 30 out with the wind chill, or without a wind chill even, then it's minus 40 or so, you are not stripping down and changing your base layer, because that's going to be what is the most damp. What you do is I dry out by my body heat, and using polyester, it dries rather quickly before I go to bed. Also, like I said, I'd take this off and I would take this off, leaving this sweater on and my base layer. If I get cold, I can put another layer on, because I have seen myself have to put another layer on, and then I'm toasty the rest of the night. It's all about managing your sweat. So managing how much you sweat is most important. The problem is people will be chilly and they'll crawl into their sleeping bag fully dressed like this. They're nice and warm, they're not sweating. Middle of the night, they start really warming up and they start to sweat. Then your radiant heat evaporates that sweat and makes you cold. So stripping off first and only putting on layers when you need them. Like I said, I have seen myself need layers, and I have slept in a full, just like this, in a sleeping bag because I needed it and I was warm all night. It's all about managing sweat. They say never sleep with your clothing on, but it's all about managing sweat. So I want to thank you for watching. I hope these tips help a few folks. And that's what I've done for years. It's worked for me. You know, you can't always be 100% prepared, but it wouldn't be an adventure if you were. Sometimes I get cool at nights, but I'm still here, and this stuff can be deadly, so know your gear and do it safely. I can't stress that enough. I mean, this here can be dangerous, but safety is the key, and you can have great enjoyment enjoying the cold weather as I do. Thanks for watching. Take care, and thanks Really Big Monkey for the tag. All the best.